I just want to take this time. The choir, half the people are on vacation, as you can see. We're doing the best we can today. And I want to thank some of the praise band that's come to join us this morning, too, to help out. We have missed, since John Drain passed away, we lost one of our quintet. And then Alex Ingalls has been ill this year and has not been able to sing. So we're so thankful that the young boys have come to join us some more. I even enlisted my husband too, which was kind of but I want to thank you for this little song. This little song was given to us by Floyd Patterson. If many of you remember him years ago, they came here and sang with us. And he introduced us to this song. And in the meantime, I said, gee, my guys have nice voices. They should be singing. So this morning, that's what we're going to do. Thank you.
Here, I'll take that.
Koffel gave a little lesson with using his hand. Sally Patriga told me about it. She really liked it. And it just so happened, I never looked for this sort of thing, but it just so happened in my studying and reading this week, I ran across a little lesson using not hands, but fingers. And actually, it comes to us directly from the heart of Mother Teresa, who usually isn't one you think of playing finger games. But Mother Teresa said, the mission of Jesus Christ is in your fingertips. The mission of Jesus Christ is in your fingertips. You did it unto me. You did it unto me. She said that is the heart, that's the motivation for doing mission. Matthew chapter 10 leads right into that idea. We're going to read that from that chapter. It's on page 1512. We're just going to read the last 3 verses of it. But just a quick review, because the last 3 verses are like a culmination of a series of events and teachings. Matthew 10 is a chapter that is just chock full of action and reaction and some of the most challenging teachings of Jesus. It starts out with a mission trip. Jesus has been with his disciples for a while. He's been teaching them, he's been healing, he's been preaching about the coming of the kingdom of God, and he has reached a point where he turns to his disciples and he says to them, okay guys, okay, you've been watching me for a while, now it's time to see how much you've learned. So he sends the disciples out 2 by 2 by 2 into the countryside, asking them, challenging them, sending them Holy Spirit so they can do the healing and the teaching and the exorcism of spirits that he does. But before they head out, Jesus wants to make sure his disciples don't go on their first mission trip with any false illusions. So he lays out some of his most challenging statements. And in a nutshell, I'm condensing the middle verses of chapter 10. He says, when you go out into the world in my name, not everyone will be pleased. When you go out into the world preaching about my kingdom, people might not even like you. When you go into the world, the authorities in the land will reject you. And maybe, and this is a hard one, maybe, when you live the values and way and preach the values of my kingdom, maybe your own family is going to reject you. Now, you know, if that's the result of doing mission, who wants to go on the mission field for Jesus' sake, right? Sounds like nothing but bad news, hard news, but there is great reward. There is great value in being a part of God's kingdom come. And these are the last 3 verses that we find in this promise. Jesus says, in verse 39, whoever finds his life will lose it. Whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. He who receives you receives me, and he who receives me receives the one who sent me. Anyone who receives a prophet because he is a prophet will receive a prophet's reward. Anyone who receives a righteous man because he is a righteous man will receive a righteous man's reward. And then, this is the least of these, this is Mother Teresa here. And if anyone gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones because he is my disciple, I tell you the truth, he will certainly not lose his reward. And this is the word of the Lord. You know, the last time I preached 2 weeks ago, I concluded my message with a quote, and a number of people asked for that quote because they really liked it. So I'm going to deliver it again at the beginning of this message because it really leads into the ideas that I've got this morning. The quote comes from a man named Albert Edward Day in a book called Captivating Presence. And basically, it's a beautiful way of saying, God is faithful, and we are his children. And God, if nothing else, is faithful to his children. And the book says, so we need not speculate, we need not worry on what will be his response when we turn to him. Whether it be from an hour of victory or from a night of defeat, whether it be from an act of which we are proud are from one of which we are heartily ashamed, whether it be with our heads held high or bent low, we may come to God jubilantly to thank him for what he has done, or we may come to our Father barely able to utter a faint cry for help. But when we come to God is always God, and he is there for his children. You know, some of us are senior enough to remember a man named Don Sutton. Don Sutton was a pitcher for the Los Angeles Dodgers. The Dodgers were in the pennant race, and Don Sutton was on their starting pitching rotation. Well, it turns out he had not had a very good outings for a while. In fact, Don Sutton had not won a game in 8 weeks. The press, like the press can do, was strongly urging Don Sutton to be removed from the starting rotation. The future looked bleak, and Don Sutton, of course, felt absolutely horrible. Well, then before a big game, the manager, Walter Alston, tapped Don Sutton on the shoulder and said, "Come back to my office, I need to speak with you." And Sutton went back to the office prepared for the worst. "Don," the manager said, "I know the past couple months have been very, very hard for you. Everyone is wondering whether we can make the playoffs. You know there's a lot of pressure on you, a lot of pressure on us. But Don, I've made a decision. If the Dodgers are going to win this year, they are going to win with Don Sutton pitching. They are going to win with Don Sutton pitching. And I don't care what happens, you are in the starting rotation." That's all I want to say. What great management, huh? And what's even more amazing to me is that for the next 2 weeks, Don Sutton continued to lose. But he said, after the season, something inside me was different, even when I was losing, because I knew the manager had my back. I knew that he had confidence in me, and eventually I could find that confidence again. And when they ended the final weeks of the pennant race and ended the playoff, he won 13 out of 14 games. That's a pretty good percentage. You know, there's all kinds of theories about how to motivate people. We can motivate people through guilt. We can motivate people through fear. We can motivate people through shame. But these are not Jesus' methods. Jesus motivates through messages of hope and promise and presence. If anyone gives even 1 cup of cold water to one of these little ones, and a lot of times little ones in the Bible, in the New Testament, means children, but in Matthew it means people kind of new to the faith, or people on the outskirts, people who aren't, in the middle. Little ones are the vulnerable ones to Matthew. Anyone who gives a cup of water to the vulnerable ones, because he's my disciple, they won't lose their reward. All of us have a cup of cold water, don't we? All of us have 1 cup of cold water to give away. And what are we going to do with it? Are we going to keep that cold water for ourselves, or are we going to share it? Whoever finds his life will lose it. Whoever loses his life, for my sake, will find it. Or a very literal translation would be, whoever clings to life is going to lose it. Whoever sets it free for my kingdom will find it. It's almost as though life comes to us a big flowing river. It's like the praise sound, let the rivers flow. I want to sing that this morning. I didn't tell the praise band ahead of time, I should have. But water comes to us like a big flowing stream. We have 2 choices when that water flows into our lives. One, we can become a lake, and we can keep the lake, keep the water in the lake. We can build banks around it. We can make sure we stop up all the holes and make sure all the water stays with us, except the part that's flowing in, just keep it all there. But what happens to a lake like that? It becomes stagnant, it becomes ugly, and water probably even becomes unhealthy. It's no good for anything. Or we can be like a little stream, and when the big stream, the big river of God's blessings and God's promises and God's words and God's dream pours into our lives, we can let it nourish us and fill us, and then just let it pass through. And when we do that, when we let go of our lives, when we stop trying to save it for ourselves, when we give it away for Jesus' sake, we become an active, living part of God's kingdom come. And that is where we want to be. And you know what? That is great news. That is a tremendous promise. We are enriched, and so are the people we reach, right? Because doesn't he say, anyone who receives you receives me, and anybody who receives me receives the one who sent me? So the people we go to, who receive us, who listen to us, who take that cup of cold water, they're connected through this chain of being, this chain of grace, this chain of power, this chain of love to God. That's amazing. But you know what? This verse assumes something. It assumes that we're sent. And that's the hard part for churches. It assumes that we're sent. Doesn't it? It goes back to the beginning of the chapter when Jesus says, okay guys, 2 by 2 by 2 by 2, I want you to go out there. It assumes that we are sent. It assumes that we are being sent into the world to participate by word and deed in the sharing of the kingdom that is drawing near. Matthew, one person said, assumes the church is a sent church. There's simply no other way to really be the church. So, you know, I ask myself, we ask ourselves, churches all around the world find themselves stumbling into these questions. How are we going to get more people through those doors? How are we going to get more people to sit in these pews? How are we going to get more people to help us pay the light bill and the air conditioning bill? How are we going to get more people to do that? Jesus says, let's go out there. Let's go out there. That's where he sends his disciples. I believe that's where he still sends his disciples. Taking even a cup of cold water. Losing ourselves for Jesus' sake. Even in this distressed community. And we find ourselves. You know, what would happen if we did that? What would happen if we took our own little cup of water and found somebody to share it with? So that they could welcome us. And when they welcome us, they're welcoming Jesus. When they welcome Jesus, they're welcoming God the Father. If anyone gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones who's my disciple, truly I tell you, that person will not lose their reward. You know, there's a pastor at Peachtree United Methodist Church. His name is Don Hart, and he tells a great little story. He said, not too far from the church, a couple girls, they opened up a Kool-Aid stand. And I wanted to encourage their entrepreneurial spirit, so I went down and I bought a cup of Kool-Aid. And the girls sat there, and they were watching me drink my Kool-Aid, so I chatted with them for a while. Drank my Kool-Aid, and finally one of them said, are you done yet? And he said, well, almost. Why? She said, well, that's our only cup. Guess what? I know when we look around this congregation, there is a lot more than one cup. There are lots of cups in this congregation. And that's all we have to share. Doing the kingdom of God work doesn't mean like big events. More often it's done in small, faithful acts done over and over and over and over again. We're never going to be a big mega church. We're never going to be this high-tech, sophisticated video screen, big sound church. We do well with who we've got. With what we've got, we're doing the best, absolutely the best that God gives us the ability to do. But we're not going to have this huge impact. But you know, there's a great little story. You take a ball of cork, 1 ounce ball of cork, suspended from the ceiling on a string. Right beside it, like a 10-pound ball of iron, suspended from the ceiling on a string. And you take that little 1 ounce ball of cork and get it to knock against that ball. Just gently, but persistently, over and over and over and over again. Eventually that ball, that big ball of iron, begins to move. And maybe that's an image for evangelism. I mean, I know we think Billy Graham and big theaters, big baseball fields and stadiums. How about a little cork ball bouncing off an iron ball? And when we gently but persistently share what God has given to us with others, persistently and faithfully and gently, it makes a difference. We all have small cups of water to give away, don't we? Karen knows all these people in the clothing closet, and a lot of others do. Jared Beesock works down there, Sally works down there, a lot of folks have volunteered. What if we came down, some of us, and just found one person in that clothing closet and became their friend? Just one person. And just, gently became their friend. How can I help you? Do you want to have a cup of coffee together? Just very gently, not every day, just over time. That's giving a cup of cold water to somebody who needs it. What if we went over to 8th Avenue Place? And I'm not talking about when it's fine to come to the gathering here, but what if you go over to 8th Avenue Place there on West Street? Because I'm on the board with 8th Ave, and we're getting ready to start the mentoring program. At least that's our hope, dream. But we need mentors. What if you mentored one kid for a while and helped them learn how to read, do their math, whatever mentors do? I'm not even sure. But just one young person. That's a cup of cold water they need. That would make a difference. Or how about the senior citizens in this area? Senior citizens in our facilities, our nursing homes, our senior care facilities. A lot of you know that Heather's dad is not doing well. He's slipped badly, is in skilled nursing care right now, and it's kind of stabilized. But the other night we were visiting, and I needed to stretch my legs, so I walked out into the hallway. It was about, 8 o'clock, 8:30, something like that. And as I was walking down the hallway, a woman stepped out of one of the rooms. And she was the very picture of sadness. She was already frail, in her 70s. Her head was dropped. Her shoulders were hunched. She gave a big sigh. And she began to walk down the hallway toward me. And I thought, what would it be like? Heather's parents have been married over 60 years. What would it be like to walk out of the room of a person to whom you've been married for 60 years? Not knowing if they would be alive when you came back? What would that be like? Did she need a cup of cold water? Heather told me when I shared this story, she said, you know what, Michael, there's a coffee and tea station at the end of the hallway. What if I had just said, man, why don't we have a cup of tea together just for a few minutes? Tell me about, I presume, your husband. Just a cup of cold water. The good news is, folks, we don't have to change the world. We don't have to change Homestead. That is God's job. All we got to do is take the cup of cold water He gave us and give it away. And when we do that, we will find ourselves. We will find our purpose. We will find life. We will find that we are right in the middle of God's plan. And that in itself is a great reward. Amen.
And standing as we sing our song.